In a world that often feels overwhelming, a world where emotions can be messy, painful, and unpredictable, the idea of being cold-hearted holds a strange, almost forbidden appeal. Imagine for a moment a state where insults bounce off you like water from a duck's back, where betrayals don't shatter your world, only register as data points, where decisions are made with surgical precision, unclouded by sentimentality, guilt, or the need for external validation. To some, this sounds like a superpower, a shield in a vulnerable world, a path to ultimate control, resilience, perhaps even success. The cold-hearted person is often portrayed as powerful, unfeeling, impenetrable. They walk through conflict and chaos, seemingly untouched. But what does that really mean? Is it truly possible, or even desirable, to turn off your heart like a light switch? And what are the true mechanisms behind the perception of coldness? Let's be clear up front. This isn't a guide on how to extinguish your empathy, how to become cruel, or how to intentionally hurt others. Genuine heartlessness leads to isolation, suffering, and a life devoid of true connection and meaning. That is a high price to pay, and ultimately a self-defeating path. Instead, this video is an exploration. It's about understanding the strategies and mindsets that are often perceived as cold-heartedness. It's about looking at concepts like emotional detachment, logical decision-making, setting ruthless boundaries, and relentless focus, and examining how they are applied, sometimes in ways that look cold from the outside, but are, for some, tools for self-preservation, resilience, and achieving goals. Think of it less as becoming heartless, and more about building an incredibly strong inner structure. A structure that allows you to navigate the world with greater control, less reactivity, and a clearer focus on what truly matters to you. We're going to break down 7 distinct points, 7 principles or approaches that, when adopted, can lead to you being perceived as more detached, less overtly emotional, and yes, perhaps even cold-hearted by those around you. But as we explore each one, always remember the distinction: perceived coldness versus genuine absence of humanity. The goal here, if there is one, is mastery, not emptiness. Let's dive into the first principle. Point number 1, cultivate radical emotional control. This is perhaps the most fundamental aspect people associate with being cold-hearted, the apparent lack of emotional reaction. Think of the stereotypical poker player, the unflappable leader, the person who receives terrible news with unsettling calm. Cultivating radical emotional control doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. Humans are wired to feel. It means you become incredibly adept at managing how and when those emotions are expressed, and how much they influence your immediate actions and outward demeanor. This starts with awareness. You must first recognize the emotion rising within you: anger, fear, sadness, frustration. The cold-hearted approach is to acknowledge its presence without letting it hijack your system. It's about creating a deliberate pause between stimulus and response. For most people, an upsetting comment, a frustrating setback, or a moment of fear triggers an immediate, visible reaction. A flinch, a flushed face, a sharp word, a visible slump. The person cultivating perceived coldness works diligently to eliminate this automatic outward display. How? Through intense self-monitoring and practice. It's about maintaining a neutral facial expression, keeping your voice even and calm, controlling your body language to avoid signs of agitation or vulnerability. It's about training yourself not to react impulsively to provocations or emotional appeals. Imagine a colleague makes a passive-aggressive remark. The typical response might be to feel a surge of defensiveness or anger and respond in kind, perhaps escalating the situation. The person practicing radical emotional control feels that surge, acknowledges it internally, and then consciously chooses a calm, perhaps even indifferent, response. "Okay, I hear you," delivered flatly, can be far more powerful and unnerving than an angry outburst. This practice extends beyond negative emotions. It also means controlling displays of overt joy, excitement, or vulnerability that could be perceived as weakness or used against you. Celebrating a small victory internally rather than externally, or sharing personal struggles only with a highly vetted inner circle are aspects of this control. It requires constant vigilance. You become an observer of your own internal state, always assessing what you're feeling and deliberately deciding whether and how to let any of it show. It's like wearing an internal suit of armor, not to feel nothing, but to ensure that what you feel inside doesn't leak out and expose you to the elements or to the intentions of others. The benefit, from the perspective of perceived coldness, is that you appear strong, stable, and unaffected. People find it harder to read you, harder to manipulate you through emotional means, and may even be intimidated by your composure in the face of chaos. You project an aura of quiet power. However, the potential cost is significant. Suppressing emotions constantly can be exhausting. It can lead to internal stress, and if taken too far, can genuinely disconnect you from your own authentic feelings. It can also make you appear aloof, unapproachable, and intimidating in a negative way, hindering genuine connection with others. The line between control and repression is fine, and often dangerously blurry. This practice, while appearing cold, is fundamentally about discipline, not necessarily an absence of feeling. Point number 2, prioritize logic and rationality above all else. If point 1 is about controlling the outward expression of emotion, point 2 is about minimizing its influence on your decision-making process. The cold-hearted individual is often seen as someone who makes choices based purely on facts, data, and logical outcomes, rather than empathy, sympathy, or personal feelings. Think of a business leader making a tough decision that impacts employees, like restructuring or layoffs. The purely rational approach focuses solely on the bottom line, efficiency, and long-term financial health of the company, perhaps viewing employees as data points or necessary costs. A person driven by emotion might be paralyzed by the potential suffering or try to avoid the decision altogether. The perceived cold person makes the difficult choice because logically, it serves the larger objective. This principle involves consciously pushing emotional considerations to the background when evaluating options. When faced with a choice, you train yourself to ask, what are the objective facts? What are the potential outcomes of each option? Which option best serves the defined goal, irrespective of how it feels? It means analyzing situations with a detached, analytical mindset. It's like being a scientist observing an experiment. You are interested in cause and effect, the mechanics of the situation, not your personal feelings about the variables. Someone tells you a sob story, you listen, but your mind is primarily processing. Is this true? What is their objective? How does this information fit into the overall picture? The emotional content is noted, but doesn't necessarily drive your conclusion or action. This approach is highly effective in situations requiring objectivity and difficult, unpopular decisions. It allows you to cut through emotional drama and focus on practical solutions. It prevents you from being swayed by guilt trips, flattery, or appeals to pity if they don't align with your logical assessment of the situation. For example, loaning money to a friend. An emotional decision might be based purely on wanting to help someone you care about, even if you know they have a history of not paying back. The logical, perceived, cold-hearted decision is to assess the friend's ability to repay, the risk to your own finances, and the potential damage to the friendship if the loan goes bad. You might decide logically not to lend the money or to put strict terms in place, despite the emotional discomfort this might cause for both of you. This might be seen as cold, but it's arguably rational self-preservation and managing risk. To cultivate this, you need to practice identifying your emotional biases. When making a decision, pause and ask, is this choice being driven by fear, by wanting to be liked, by guilt, by excitement? Once identified, consciously set those feelings aside and reevaluate based only on the facts and likely outcomes. The danger here is obvious and profound. While prioritizing logic can lead to efficient decisions, Removing empathy entirely leads to a lack of compassion and an inability to connect with the human experience of others. Decisions made solely on logic can be brutal, unfair, and ultimately destructive to relationships and social harmony. A truly cold reliance on logic can blind you to important human nuances and the value of connection itself. Point number 3, establish impenetrable boundaries. Setting boundaries is often seen as a healthy, assertive behavior, but when taken to an extreme or enforced with unwavering rigidity and lack of emotional explanation, it can be perceived as cold-heartedness. The cold-hearted person has exceptionally strong, often invisible, walls around their time, energy, and emotional space. This means learning to say no without guilt, apology, or lengthy explanation. Someone asks for a favor that drains your time or energy without offering reciprocal value. A simple, firm, "No, I can't do that" is sufficient. You don't need to invent an excuse or justify your refusal emotionally. Your refusal is a statement of your boundary, non-negotiable, based on their emotional reaction. It involves protecting your peace and privacy fiercely. You don't feel obligated to share personal information, justify your choices, or allow people access to your inner world or your schedule simply because they want it. You control access to yourself. This also extends to protecting yourself from emotional vampires or toxic relationships. While many people struggle to distance themselves from draining individuals due to feelings of obligation, pity, or hope that things will change, the person cultivating perceived coldness cuts ties decisively and with minimal emotional fuss. If a relationship is consistently harmful or non-beneficial, it's not necessarily done out of malice, but out of a logical assessment that the relationship costs more than it gives, or causes undue emotional distress, and therefore is not worth the investment. This might involve ghosting, a brief, final conversation, or simply ceasing communication without lengthy explanations or debates. The boundary is often enforced without visible emotional struggle. While internally detaching from someone might be difficult, the external presentation is one of resolved finality. There are no long goodbyes, no endless second chances for repeated boundary violations, no visible signs of pain over the separation, at least outwardly. This unwavering enforcement of boundaries can feel shocking and rejecting to others, hence the perception of coldness. Think about someone who consistently arrives late, disrespecting your time. A person with weak boundaries might tolerate it or complain passively. Someone setting strong boundaries might issue a clear warning. A person perceived as cold might simply leave after the agreed-upon waiting period without calling, or refuse to meet that person again, without explaining the deeper hurt or frustration behind their decision. Just the consequence of the boundary violation. The benefit? You protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being ruthlessly. You avoid being taken advantage of. You teach people how to treat you by showing them the clear consequences of crossing your lines. You gain an immense amount of personal autonomy. The cost? This level of detachment in setting boundaries can make you appear rigid, unyielding, and uncaring about the impact your decisions have on others' feelings. While healthy boundaries are essential, impenetrable boundaries can prevent intimacy, vulnerability, and the spontaneous give and take that enriches genuine relationships. People might feel disposable or unimportant to you. Point number 4, maintain relentless focus on your goals. A hallmark of many individuals perceived as cold-hearted is their unwavering, sometimes single-minded focus on their objectives. Be they career advancement, financial success, personal projects, or a specific outcome. Personal relationships, social obligations, and emotional dramas are often seen as secondary or even obstacles to this primary focus. This means prioritizing your work, your mission, or your goals above social events, spontaneous hangouts, or even significant personal needs of others if they conflict with your objectives. It means being willing to make sacrifices of time, comfort, relationships, if those sacrifices serve your larger aims. Consider the driven entrepreneur who works 16-hour days, missing family events and social gatherings, or the artist who isolates themselves for months to complete a project. Their actions are dictated by the demands of their goal, and personal connections might suffer as a result. To the people around them who feel neglected or unimportant, this intense prioritization can easily be interpreted as coldness or a lack of caring. Relentless focus also means avoiding distractions. Emotional turbulence, whether your own or someone else's, is seen as unproductive noise that takes you away from your path. You might dismiss emotional appeals or problems that don't directly impact your goals, not necessarily because you lack empathy entirely, but because you view them as hindrances to what you deem most important. This focus is often accompanied by extreme discipline. You set a course of action and stick to it, even when it's difficult, boring, or unpopular. You don't rely on motivation. You rely on commitment to the outcome. This discipline can be perceived as robotic or unfeeling by those who are more spontaneous or emotionally driven. The benefit of this relentless focus is clear. It significantly increases your chances of achieving ambitious goals. You become highly effective and productive because your energy isn't scattered across numerous obligations or emotional entanglements. You are seen as determined and successful. The cost, however, is substantial. A life lived solely in pursuit of external goals at the expense of meaningful relationships and personal well-being can ultimately feel empty. You risk alienating loved ones, missing out on spontaneous joys, and becoming so fixated on the destination that you fail to appreciate the journey or the people who might have wanted to share it with you. This isn't just about being perceived as cold. It's about potentially becoming emotionally isolated due to misplaced priorities. Point number 5. Practice detached observation and analysis. This point ties into prioritizing logic, but focuses specifically on how you perceive and process information about the world and the people within it. The person cultivating perceived coldness views interactions and situations with a degree of emotional distance, analyzing them almost clinically, like a scientist studying specimens in a lab. Instead of getting caught up in the drama, the emotions, or the personal narratives of a situation, you train yourself to step back and observe objectively. What is actually happening? What are the observable behaviors? What are the likely underlying motivations stripped of emotional appeals? Imagine witnessing an argument between two people. The emotionally engaged person might feel stressed, pick a side based on sympathy, or try to intervene emotionally. The detached observer notes the verbal cues, the body language, the power dynamics, the apparent triggers, and the escalation patterns. They are interested in the mechanics of the conflict, viewing it as a case study in human behavior rather than a personal emotional event. This applies to how you receive information as well. Someone shares news, good or bad. Instead of immediately reacting with strong emotion, you process the information itself. How reliable is the source? What are the potential implications? How does this new data point change your understanding of the situation? The emotional color is secondary to the factual content and its practical relevance. This practice requires suppressing your immediate emotional resonance with others' feelings. When someone is upset, instead of immediately feeling sympathetic distress, you might first analyze why they are upset, what outcome they seek by showing their emotion, and what your most logical response should be. This doesn't mean you can't feel empathy, but that your default mode is analysis, not resonant feeling. This detached observation can make you appear unreactive and unsympathetic, hence the perception of coldness. You might ask questions that seem probing or insensitive because you are focused on gathering facts rather than providing emotional comfort. You might not offer effusive praise or commiseration because your mind is already processing the next logical step or analyzing the deeper context. The benefit is clarity. By stepping back emotionally, you can often see situations and people more clearly, free from the distortions of your own biases or the emotional noise generated by others. This allows for more accurate assessments and potentially more effective strategies for dealing with complex issues. You are less likely to be blindsided by unexpected emotional reactions from others because you've observed patterns of behavior. The cost? This constant state of detached analysis can make genuine, spontaneous, emotional connection difficult. Others might feel scrutinized rather than connected with. You might miss out on the richness of shared emotional experiences, both positive and negative, which are fundamental to human bonding and understanding. Empathy is not just feeling for someone, it's feeling with them, and detached observation can make the latter very challenging. Point number 6. Learn to be highly assertive, not people-pleasing. People-pleasing is driven by a desire for external validation, a fear of rejection, and an emotional need to be liked. The person perceived as cold-hearted often seems immune to these needs. They are highly assertive, stating their needs, opinions, and boundaries directly and without apparent concern for how others might react emotionally. This means speaking your mind even when your opinion is unpopular. It means stating your needs and expectations clearly, without softening the message or apologizing for having them. It means being direct and unambiguous in your communication, which can sometimes be perceived as blunt or insensitive by those accustomed to more indirect, emotionally cushioned language. For example, if someone asks you to do something you don't want to do or don't have time for, the people pleaser might invent an elaborate excuse or reluctantly agree, feeling resentful. The highly assertive person, potentially perceived as cold, simply states, "No, I can't do that," or "That doesn't work for me," or "I'm not willing to do that," without further justification. Their refusal is based on their own assessment of the situation relative to their own priorities and boundaries, not on the other person's potential disappointment. This assertiveness often comes across as confidence, but without the warmth that often accompanies confident individuals who also value rapport. The focus is on the message and the desired outcome, not on managing the emotional state of the listener. This can make interactions feel transactional or confrontational to those who are more sensitive or conflict-averse. Not seeking external validation is a key component. The people pleaser constantly seeks approval and reassurance from others to feel good about themselves. The person cultivating perceived coldness derives their sense of worth internally, based on their own standards and achievements. They don't need others' validation, praise, or agreement to feel secure. This self-sufficiency, while a form of strength, can look like indifference to others. Compliments may be accepted matter-of-factly, criticism processed analytically rather than emotionally. The benefit is incredible personal power and authenticity. You live life on your own terms, make choices that are right for you, and avoid being manipulated by the emotional needs or expectations of others. You save immense energy that people pleasers expend worrying about others' opinions. You are respected, if not always liked, for your directness and conviction. The cost? Extreme assertiveness without empathy can easily cross the line into aggression or rudeness. Constantly prioritizing your own needs and opinions without considering the feelings or perspectives of others can lead to conflict and resentment. While not needing external validation is healthy, appearing completely indifferent to the impact you have on others can lead to being labeled as selfish or indeed cold-hearted, hindering cooperation and genuine connection. Point number 7. Develop a deep understanding of human behavior and use it strategically. This final point is powerful and, in the context of perceived coldness, potentially the most unsettling. It involves cultivating a keen ability to observe, analyze, and understand the motivations, desires, fears, and psychological triggers of others. When combined with emotional control and logic, this understanding can be used to navigate social landscapes with great effectiveness and potentially to gain an advantage. This means actively studying people, paying attention to what they say versus what they do, learning to read body language, vocal tone, and micro-expressions, understanding common psychological biases, defense mechanisms, and manipulation tactics. It's like learning the code that governs human interaction. Armed with this knowledge, the person cultivating perceived coldness can anticipate reactions, understand hidden agendas, and communicate in a way that strategically influences outcomes. This isn't necessarily about malicious manipulation, though that is the dark side, but about navigating interactions like a highly skilled chess player, anticipating moves and planning accordingly. For example, in a negotiation, understanding the other party's underlying fears or unspoken needs beyond their stated position gives you leverage. In a disagreement, knowing someone's typical emotional triggers allows you to either avoid escalating the conflict or, if you choose to lean into the cold perception, deliberately use that knowledge to your advantage. This understanding allows you to remain calm and objective when others are being emotional, because you see their emotions not just as feelings, but as strategies or reactions stemming from predictable psychological patterns. Someone throwing a tantrum isn't just angry. They might be seeking control, attention, or trying to intimidate. Understanding this shifts your perspective from reacting emotionally to analyzing the tactic. This ability to read people, when combined with emotional detachment, can make you seem calculating or unfeeling. You might ask pointed questions that reveal someone's true intentions or refuse to be swayed by emotional displays you perceive as inauthentic or manipulative. You might use someone's predictable behavior to achieve your goals, which, while efficient, can certainly be perceived as cold or manipulative if the other person realizes they are being managed. The benefit is immense situational awareness and interpersonal effectiveness. You are harder to deceive, harder to manipulate, and better equipped to navigate complex social and professional environments. You can predict outcomes and influence dynamics. Now here is the crucial caveat for this point. Using this understanding of human behavior for personal gain at the expense of others, for manipulation, or for inflicting harm is the true definition of negative, harmful coldness. It is psychopathic or sociopathic behavior, lacking empathy and driven by a disregard for others' well-being. This video is absolutely not endorsing that path. Understanding human behavior is a tool. It can be used for connection, for resolving conflict, for building better relationships, or for exploitation. The choice lies in your intent, and choosing the exploitative path leads down a very dark road of isolation and moral decay. This point, perhaps more than any other, highlights the razor's edge between strategic capability and genuine heartlessness. So, we've explored 7 points that contribute to the perception of being cold-hearted: radical emotional control, prioritizing logic, establishing impenetrable boundaries, maintaining relentless focus, practicing detached observation, being highly assertive, and understanding human behavior strategically. Applying these principles, even in part, will change how you are perceived. You will likely come across as more stoic, more controlled, more independent, perhaps less traditionally warm or emotionally available. For some, this is precisely the goal, to project an image of strength and invulnerability. But as we've touched upon with each point, there is a significant cost to taking these principles to their extreme, to genuinely becoming cold-hearted in the sense of lacking empathy and compassion. Let's talk about the true cost of being genuinely cold-hearted. Imagine the fortress you build around your emotions becomes a prison. You are safe from hurt, yes, but also from joy. Safe from heartbreak, but also from deep love. Safe from disappointment, but also from exhilarating connection. A life devoid of genuine emotional connection, even with its risks, is a life lacking in color, depth, and meaning for most humans. Empathy isn't just about feeling bad for someone, it's the foundation of connection, cooperation, and mutual understanding. Without it, relationships remain superficial, transactional, and ultimately unsatisfying. True coldness leads to profound isolation. People are drawn to warmth, vulnerability, in healthy doses, and emotional authenticity. If you project only an impenetrable facade, people will eventually stop trying to connect. You might be respected, feared, or even admired for your apparent strength or success, but you will likely be lonely. Furthermore, while logical decision-making is crucial, ignoring your own emotions entirely means ignoring vital information. Emotions are often signals. Fear can signal danger. Sadness can signal loss. Anger can signal a boundary violation. Constantly suppressing or ignoring these signals leaves you disconnected from your inner guidance system. A genuinely cold-hearted person doesn't just appear to lack empathy. They genuinely struggle to understand or share the feelings of others. This deficit makes navigating the complexities of human relationships incredibly difficult and often leads to causing unintentional or intentional pain. While strategic detachment can be a valuable tool in specific situations, a constant state of emotional detachment leads to a life experienced from a distance as an observer rather than a participant. The richness of being fully present, fully engaged with others and the world is lost. The irony is that many people seek to be cold-hearted to avoid pain. But true coldness doesn't eliminate pain. It transforms it into a constant dull ache of isolation and emptiness. You might not experience the sharp pain of heartbreak, but you'll miss the soaring joy of love. You might avoid the sting of betrayal, but you'll never know the comfort of true trust and vulnerability. So where does this leave us? The perceived strength of being cold-hearted isn't about killing your emotions, it's about mastering them. It's about building resilience, establishing strong boundaries, making rational decisions when necessary, and focusing your energy effectively. These are valuable skills. The wisdom lies in understanding the difference between using strategic emotional detachment as a tool when appropriate and making it your default state of being. It's about knowing when to put on the armor and when to take it off to allow for genuine human connection. True strength isn't the absence of feeling, but the ability to feel deeply, to understand those feelings, and to choose your responses and actions consciously, rather than being swept away by them. It's about integrating logic and emotion, not pitting them against each other. The journey towards what is perceived as coldness, towards greater control, resilience, and assertiveness can be a path to personal empowerment. But the journey towards actual heartlessness is a path into a self-made prison. Choose your path wisely. Learn the skills of emotional control and strategic detachment, but never forget the value and indeed the necessity of empathy, connection, and allowing yourself to be fully, messily, wonderfully human. Thank you for joining this exploration. If this video gave you a new perspective on what it means to be cold-hearted, please give it a like. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into mindset, psychology, and the human experience. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What does emotional mastery mean to you? Share your perspective in the comments below.